follow-up from last week. We talked about the Missouri open enrollment bill that would allow for out-of-district students to enroll basically any district they wanted to. There are rules and restrictions, but this is not a new thing. A nearly identical bill narrowly passed the House last year on an 85-68 vote before getting shot down. It's a similar bill. And we talked about it a little bit, pros and cons, and we listed some of those in last week. But I wanted to find out from people that were in a better position to give an opinion on this.
Yeah, kind of know more about it and what's behind it and the depths of it and stuff like that. Yeah, and we talked last week, I've talked to coaches. Coaches are against this, because it could turn into a big problem, kind of like the portal in college football has. And I think you've talked to more uppity-ups, in the school system, and it doesn't sound like they're for it.
Well, yeah, and I put a feeler out on Facebook asking what locals thought, and Stacy Shore said open enrollment will collapse rural schools. It's very bad for Missouri kids. It's about funding illegals and opening all borders to our schools. I know it sounds crazy, but this school choice movement is not what people think it is. Big money lobbyists are the same lobbyists who push Common Core, and they're driving this. This is a big push to create an open enrollment model for charter schools that are virtual models of education. It's bad, very bad. Public dollars driven to privatize public education, major taxation without any representation. Sounds great in theory. In fact, it's truly nefarious. And that is Stacy Shore. And so I reached out to Dr. Sean Kirksey, who's the superintendent with the Camdenton School District. And he said, I share in Stacy's sentiments. He said, like most political rhetoric, open enrollment legislation is merely good for a soundbite and nothing else. Dr. Kirksey had 3 issues, and this is paraphrasing his email. Financial for a locally supported school like Camdenton. That's one concern he has, is there's a lot of local support for the Camdenton School District. Not as much state funding for the Camdenton School District. They get a lot of local support. And so students that would start coming into the district would start strapping resources and making it hard, and then they would have to rely on more state funding. Unfounded mandates need local control, or unfunded mandates that would give the state control to mandate more in the local school without funding. If you have to then bust those kids because they fall under a certain poverty level, well, where do we get the extra resources to increase our bus funding? That could be a major issue. And the other one, what will become of the schools that students select to leave? Dr. Kirksey went on to say it's not as simple as one would like for it to be, but in the article we initially referenced from Lake Expo, one of the concerns is going to create a slow drain for several schools and districts. This is Representative Marlene Terry, a St. Louis Democrat, said, and that the legislation would destroy her school. And so it's a shared sentiment across both parties, across both sides, that this is dangerous, this is packed full of things that have nothing to do with benefiting the kids. And so I also reached out to Dr. Brad Yoder. He shared some of the sentiments of the schools, and it's really hard to gauge, and there's a lot of legal jargon in there and packed in there. It's really hard to sift through it, but it's hard to say at this point in time that this would really be a good thing just based on the feedback we've got from Dr. Sean Kirksey, Dr. Brad Yoder with the School of the Osage, and parent Stacy Shore, who of course been very involved over the years in battling state legislation from Common Core and things they're trying to mandate at the state level. So good people to hear from, and after hearing that, I would say you'd be hard-pressed to think that would be good for our local schools.
Looks bad, yeah. And the government has gotten so good in recent years of coming up with bills like this where it looks good on the outside, but there's so much bad stuff buried inside of that it comes back to haunt you.
It's almost like President Biden and the border bill. Like, hey, help us solve the border. Even though I, as the president, can shut down our border at any point in time, but actually in the immigration bill, it's packed full of funneling more money over to the war in Ukraine. Exact same principle of it looks good for the students, but it's more funding, more mandates, more control. And our local school leaders have really set the precedent across the state of Missouri. We don't want your mandates. We don't want your control. We want to be controlled by the parents, the locals, and the students. And really, Camdenton School District has been the standard through the state of Missouri.
So much so that remember during COVID, when COVID was trying to hand out free money basically, but it came with strings because they could tell you what to do with your school district. The Camdenton School District said, no, keep your money. We're going to run things away.
Said no
we
to
wanna run.
millions.
Yeah, I mean,
initially met
very
with
impressed.
opposition. You uncover the veil, look a little deeper, and find out what a great move, how diligent of our leaders at the Camdenton School District. So pretty cool there that they're holding the line. I don't think that it was that big of a deal when I first saw the headline. Thought kind of a nice option, but looks dangerous.
Yeah.
All right.